Hello, it's Stephen here. So I'd like to talk about some of the common mistakes that students made on the Tony at the Races, which was a summary of the videos you watched. Firstly, use a title for your writing. A lot of students didn't give a title. You could have a title such as Tony at the Races or Do the Right Thing. Use capital letters in the titles. I also recommend that you underline your titles. Use formal writing techniques. For example, avoid contractions, avoid personal pronouns, use some passives, organize your writing in paragraphs. We'll come to that later. Don't give your opinion. It's a summary. It's not an essay. Some students seem to think every piece of writing is an essay. It's not. Your job here is to explain the story. It's not about giving your opinion. Mention the orphanage. You need to talk about how the orphanage affects the behaviour of the businessman and how the orphanage affects the behaviour of Tony. So the businessman grew up in an orphanage, therefore he feels some affinity towards it, and every year he gambled money and gave the money he won to the orphanage. Similarly, Tony feels guilty because he realizes the orphanage is going to close down. Therefore, that's the motivation for him to return to the racecourse to try to make back the money. Formalize formal language. Avoid quid. Quid's very informal. Say pounds, and it's normal to use the pound sign. So, £50, for example. Check how much money you're talking about when you're talking about how much Tony was offered. Was it £20 or was it £50? How much did he find on the floor? Was it £20 or £50? Make sure you have the right amount. When you hand in, underline your past tenses and adverbials. Check you've underlined everything. Use the past perfect correctly. So, for example, Tony had been employed for some time and couldn't pay his bills. So we have two items in the past, or two actions in the past, and one was before the other. The earlier one uses the past perfect, and this other action in the past happened after this one. So two actions in the past, and the first one uses the past perfect to show it happened earlier. Spell check and proofread. There's no excuse for not spell checking. Use a word processor. To suffer a heart attack. There was some confusion here. Students using passives. He was suffered. In English you say to suffer, to have a heart attack, to suffer a heart attack. Can you double space your writing? So between each line, leave a space, which allows me to write some corrections. Using these words, at last and finally. At last means after a long time. So now you can say, I waited for a bus for an hour. At last the bus arrived, meaning after some time or after a long time. Finally is not about waiting a long time. It means it's the last item in a list. Review your use of adverbial phrases. Check your table. What type of adverbial do you need? Is it a contrast, an opposite? Is it a time adverbial? When something happened, whenever, when, before. Check past continuous and past simple. Past continuous signifies something that happened for a longer time than past simple. Think about, I heard her screaming, and I heard her scream. A scream might be one scream. Ah! Screaming, I heard her screaming, signifies a longer. Ah! As the example is here, he was doing, past continuous, or he did. Financial and economic seems to be mixed up by some people. Financial is on a smaller scale, it's more personal. Economic is on a bigger scale. For example, the economy of a country. So Tony probably would have financial problems. It's a more personal level, smaller scale. Use capital letters for people's names. Tony, for example, needs a capital T. Use paragraphs. Make sure you're writing on A4 sized paper. Check your spacing around commas and full stops. For example, here it's wrong. you need to have no space between excited and the comma. You should have a space after the comma, yes. So I hope these pointers can help you.